Hello, dear viewer. A very good morning to you, and thank you for joining us on this conversation with me, Maureen Kimani, right here on Capuchin TV. Today being Monday, 15th May 2023, well, every 15th May is celebrated as International Day of Families. And of course, joining me in the studio, we have two guests of which they will be helping us to understand more about this day. Why is it important to create awareness? And as we know, in the world today, the families are being faced with a lot of challenges today. We have so many killings going on. We have divorces, name them all. And of course, I'm going to start with a quote by Michael J. Fox that says, "Family is not an important thing, it's actually everything." And until you find yourself in this situation where you found yourself in a care institution, that's when you realize you're very fortunate to have your family, your mom, your dad, and all your siblings. Well, a very good morning. Joining me, as I said, we have two guests, and I'll be giving them time to explain and to say who they are and what they do. Welcome to the conversation. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello, Maureen.
How are you doing?
Great this morning.
Good to have you here, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And okay, all right. And I think I'm going to begin with you. You can tell our viewers what's your name and what you do.
Thank you, Maureen. My name is Timon Mainga. I work with Catholic Relief Services, Kenya County Program. I'm the project director for Changing the Way We Care, which is basically a program looking at, ensuring or supporting children to grow up within families and communities. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Timon Mainga, for explaining to our viewer, of which we'll be getting to know what does changing the way we care involves, and what is it all about. And moving on, we can have our second guest to introduce himself to the viewer. Karibu.
Thank you so much. My name is Joel Mude, and currently working with a startup charity institution or program that is based in the USA, but currently working doing charity works in Kenya with a certain children's center in Kirinyaga County. So its name is Joystone Ministries, and it's currently working with one CCI, which is where I grew up, and I work as a project manager and consultant. Yeah.
Karibu sana, and it's good to have you here.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to begin with Timon Mainga. You talked about the Changing the Way We Care project. Tell us, what is it all about?
Thank you very much, Maureen. Changing the Way We Care is a global initiative implemented in Kenya, Moldova, Guatemala, and parts of India. This is a project which was initiated through CRS, working closely with Maestro International. And the idea behind this project is that we know through research, we have many children living within residential institutions, the so-called charitable children institution in Kenya. And research shows that children who are living within these institutions miss key milestones, developmental milestones, so to speak. They also lose connection with their families and roots. And so this program is basically coming to address, reintegration of children back to families, and also ensuring that we prevent family separations, which actually make children really end up in these CCIs. Now, to be able to do this, we are working with families to strengthen issues which make children really run away from homes. Then we are also working with other stakeholders, including the CCIs, to ensure that they accept that there is need for children to grow in families. We worked very closely with the government of Kenya through the Department of Children's Services, as well as the National Council for Children, to also develop policies and guidelines and the legal framework necessary to really support our children to grow within families as well as communities. Thank you.
All right. And I understand that family is the foundation of a good society and of a good world, of course. And moving on to you, Joel Muthe, I'm sure you're giving yourself the title caregiver. When you talk about caregiver, what does it mean to our viewer who doesn't understand what caregiver is? I think you can explain to them.
Okay, so a caregiver is, we define as myself, being a caregiver is a person who has spent part or all their childhood in a charitable children institution, that's a CCI, or basically what we call children's homes and orphanages. So that person, for them to acquire the title of caregiver, which I am, must have spent part or all of their childhood in such an institution, be it a rescue center, children orphanage, or children's home and centers worldwide in Kenya. So that's and even globally, it's a title that is used for anybody who has gone through care in their childhood for one reason or another, ending up in a charitable children institution, so that they end up becoming a caregiver. It's a title you have to live with for the rest of your life, given that you passed through care and now maybe you've left care, which means now you've left care, you're no longer receiving care, but you have the experience of receiving care in an institution. So that's what a caregiver is.
All right. And how old were you when you joined this institution? And what's the story behind that, if you'd love to share?
In summary, because the story it's very long, it could be written in a book. I joined the care institution, which is Utugi Children's Center. It's in Kirinyaga County in Kenya. Back in the year 2006, I was 9 years old. So I had just been rescued fresh from the streets, and then I was taken to this institution by some church, because the institution is church-based, as many are in Kenya, church-based and sponsored by different churches. So they took me to this institution, and their main goal to take me there because they had interviewed me in the streets and asked me whether I would like to, come from the street life and move to an institution where I would have a chance to live a normal life. Not normal per se, because you would not be living in a normal family. So they asked me whether I would like to continue with education, of which I agreed, because I really wanted to go on with my education after dropping out in the previous years to go to the streets due to financial challenges at home. And so they took me to the children's center, where I joined a school. But before that, I was rehabilitated, because coming from the streets, I had some things that had to be rehabilitated, like my mental issues that I had. I had picked some bad behaviors in the streets, like criminal behaviors and others that are not socially acceptable. So I was rehabilitated in the home by a social worker who is trained on psychology and counseling. And later they took me to a school in the nearby, and a school that is a public primary school. Then I joined Standard 2, because I had dropped at Standard 1, that is primary school, the then curriculum before we came to the CBC.
Okay.
So joined the primary school, went on and on and on, as they sponsored me through academic scholarship until I joined high school, still living in the home. So the home was where I used to reside when I'm not in school.
Okay.
But when school opens, I go back to school. So I joined high school, and then went on like that. They still giving me the scholarship support until I joined university, and then graduated from university recently, actually.
And here you are.
In the year 2002. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's my short story in a summary, and of course, there's so much in between.
And that's quite a journey, I could tell. And of course, I think you are an example that one can change.
Yeah.
Exactly, because you talked about some of the behaviors that you had before, and right now I'm sure you're not involved in any of them.
Yeah.
All right, very good. And now moving on to you, Joy, Timon. What are some of the activities that you do in the Changing the Way We Care?
Thank you very much for the question. Picking from the response from Joel, children run away from home for various reasons. In instances, we have violence at home, drunkenness, families which are basically dysfunctional, make kids run away from home. And Changing the Way We Care at the family level is working with these families to really address these issues. We have a program known as Positive Parenting. This program is supposed to train parents on how to, relate with their own children. And even between your couples, how do you relate? And how do you support your children? At the family level, there are also issues of, poverty. People are facing challenges, bringing up kids. They cannot provide for children, and so children end up in the streets, like the case of my young brother Joel. So Changing the Way You Care is also working to strengthen families through, economic empowerment. We have programs where we bring groups together, groups of parents together, train them on a model known as SILK. SILK simply means, coming together as a group, agreeing to pool resources into a common pot where they can borrow and be able to invest, have the seed capital to invest. We are also, connecting these families with opportunities which are available through, government. We have been having government cash transfers and also linking them to other services to really ensure that these families address issues which make kids run away from home. Now, charitable children institutions have all the best intentions. Joel has benefited. Being moved out of the streets to a home where you can get a meal, you can get education, and he has done pretty well. Thank you, Joel, for the hard work you have done.
Sure.
Being disciplined and being focused. And when you are in the streets, you are exposed to elements, including criminal activities, drug abuse, and so on. So charitable institutions have the best intentions of supporting kids, but they cannot replace a home environment. So if we are able to address those issues at home I've just talked about, we need our children to be brought up at home. The reason is that, as I said at the beginning, children who grow up in charitable institutions miss critical milestones, developmental milestones. They also lose connection with their heritage. And in some instances, we have children who are complete orphans, who have also been disinherited because close relatives, some of them are not having the best intentions.
True.
Once kids are living in the streets or living within charitable institutions, they take advantage to sell even the piece of land left behind by the parents. So that is part of the work we do. But maybe looking at the policy environment, policy and legal environment, Changing the Way We Care, working closely with the Director of Children's Services, SCCS, and other departments and other stakeholders, including UNICEF, is working with the government to develop, have worked with the government to develop, strategies for helping to, change the way we care by ensuring that there is policy environment which supports children growing up at home, making sure that we have legal instruments to protect children so that they live at home, that the government of Kenya, through the national as well as the county governments, would want to really, invest more resources to support children within families. Make sure that children who are vulnerable, coming from highly vulnerable families, are supported. I must say this, and this is the situation in our country. The investment into the children departments and the children affairs in Kenya is minimal. Actually, our appeal is that if our national government, through the the Director of Children's Services, I'm sorry, I'm keeping saying department because that was the name before.
It's okay.
Yeah, the Director of Children's Services and NCCS and other departments supporting our children in Kenya can really invest more money in this direction. Because a nation which does not take care of its young ones is a nation going nowhere, because these young ones are replacing us. Tomorrow, if I'm not here, a young Kenyan is supposed to take my place and do the work I'm doing. And even all of us, Maureen, including all sectors. So if we don't take care of our young ones, the big question is, where is Kenya as a nation heading? So broadly, that is what changing the way we care is doing. But maybe just to add very quickly, we work through partners. We have partners working on the ground who do all this work on the ground. We also work closely with the government and other stakeholders. But also important, we work very closely with the caregivers like Joel. Joel is a member of KESCA. KESCA is a Kenya Association of Caregivers, and it is bringing together this team and making sure that their voices are heard, that the testimonies which people like Joel can give will cause influence so that we can change the policy environment on how we take care of our children. In a nutshell, that is what we are doing. The story is long and big. We are also looking at, disability in our programs. I know we'll be talking about it.
Exactly.
Yeah, later on. I don't want to expound on that in particular. But we are looking at all children across the board. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Timon, for that. And to you, Joel, I'm sure Timon has been able to talk about a lot of these charitable work and whatever the services they are giving you, and you being a beneficiary of it. According to the experience that you had, including the mental health that you had to go through and make sure that you are perfect and you start living by, leaving all that you had behind, what do you think the society should do, or even the people who have families back at home, as Timon mentioned about parents taking care of their children? What do you think should be done by the parents?
I think the parents should create an environment that is, peaceful and accommodating, that makes children feel really like they want to belong to a family. Because once a child ceases from feeling the need to belong to a family, then they exempt themselves and exit, look for somewhere else where they can call family. So some of them actually leave home to join the streets or any other place that is not family, just because they don't feel accepted, maybe, or the challenges that are at home. The parents are not working hard enough to enable the family to overcome the challenges, and the kid feels the burden, and they feel like the parents have failed in their role as parents. So the kid will be, tempted to leave the family, and because nobody would leave family when they felt like they belonged in the family and they feel comfortable, like this is where I want to be, this is where I want to grow up, I have everything I need, and I feel happy, and everything that can be felt, that can be called good. So I think the families, right from the parents and all the family stakeholders, let's say from the basic, from the nuclear family, extended, and whatever that can be called, that is under family in the community at large, they should make these families be a place where the kids want to be. So the parents should not make the kids feel like the challenges that are at home, part of why the challenges are there is because of them. Like if the parents are financially not very able, or the financial situation is not very good at home, and the kid feel like a burden, they feel like, okay, if I didn't belong in this family, they wouldn't be having such a challenge. Like they have a challenge paying for my education, they can't feed me like the way I deserve, like a kid, because I cannot go out there and fend for myself. So the kid would feel like moving away from the family would actually reduce the challenge that is there. So the parents should be, be more keen to make sure that the family is well catered for, because they are the backbone of the family. That is the father and the mother, or if the mother is alone, or if the father is alone, and make the kid want to be there rather than belonging somewhere else. So that's what the family should do, and at the community level, and maybe at the national level, maybe the government, I don't know, the government should empower the families, because if the families are empowered both economically, or we could say financially, socially, then the families are able to hold together. It's all about the families holding together. That is everybody being part and feeling part and wanting to continue being part rather than,
wow, I love that.
away.
And I'm sure Timoni would agree with that.
I agree, 100%. Well
And-
said, yeah.
Okay, you want to say something?
No, I'm just saying that that is well said from Joel.
All right.
Yeah, being part, feeling like you belong, that you have no other option out there better than the family. Yeah.
All right. And I think as we continue, you can talk about the importance of the family in the society and, of course, in the country at large.
Thank you. Families, first of all, are ordained by God. If I may start from there, that children are meant to grow up within the family setting. Families should have the required nurturing care for the young ones. If families are able to do that, then the children will feel that they belong. And so there'll be no need for separation. But as I said earlier on, there are issues which bring separation within families. Issues which make children feel that they don't belong. And there are also other factors beyond that. We have kids who have been left behind by their parents. We have diseases. HIV/AIDS incidence in Kenya has reduced significantly over the years. I think at the moment we are talking of the national average of being about 3%. But we have pockets of this country where the average is still high. A lot of children have been left off hand. If they don't have relatives who are ready to take care of them, the relatives are overwhelmed, or they are willing to take care of them, but they are not able to. We end up with children, going into the streets, and they end up in CCIs. If we have broken families, as Joel has just shared, sometimes you have broken families. A kid feels that I don't belong here. A lot of violence at home. Parents are not talking from the same point. Mother, father are ever fighting. We also have families where we have, single parents, and because of economic reasons, things are tough. Kids ends up in the street. So I think the family is everything. It provides, that nurturing care I've talked about. Unfortunately, for some families which have not even broken up and even have economic abilities, their communication and upbringing of children is wanting. And so we are talking about positive parenting as, an intervention which really addresses the gaps, addresses the issues which make children, run away from home, so that parents have a better relation with their children, they have a better connection, they have a better guidance and support for the children.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Timon, for that message that you're putting out and you're saying to people and to parents and to our viewers who are watching us back at home. And I think with that, we're going to take a very short break. And then when we come back, as you say, today is on Monday, the 15th, and it's the International Day of Families. Of course, you will tell us, why is it important to have this day, or rather to celebrate it? And with that, we're going to take a very short break. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Na hii Capuchin TV ni chombo kizuri sana, na chombo hiki kazi yake ni evangelization. Kwa hivyo ningeomba mfanye mambo matatu. Jambo la kwanza, tafadhali wewe enda uangalie Capuchin TV. Kuna mambo mazuri sana, kuna maombi, kuna watoto wanafanya mambo mazuri, kuna mafundisho, kuna misa takatifu kila siku. Kwa hivyo tafadhali ukipata nafasi utazame Capuchin TV. Jambo la pili, waombee kwa hiyo kazi mzuri ambayo wanafanya. Manake ndio TV ya kipekee ya Catholic, na mabishop wanaisupport kabisa, manake inafanya kazi mzuri. Kama leo, kama kuna watu wako Italy wangependa kuangalia what is happening leo, wangepata nafasi. Kwa hivyo muwaombee sana kwa hiyo kazi nzuri ambao wanafanya. Na jambo la tatu, muwasupport. Wewe wana paybill number, watumie hata ni kama ni shilingi 2. Kwa hivyo tafadhali muwasupport, muwatumie kitu kidogo kwa paybill number na mambo hayo ili waweze kuendelea na hiyo kazi. Kwa hivyo asanteni Father kwa hiyo kazi mzuri ambayo mnafanya.
Tuendelee kufanya kazi. Paybill number 510678. Account name Caps TV.
Welcome, dear viewer, to this conversation right here on Capuchin TV with me, Maureen Kimani. And we're saying a happy International Day of Families 2023. And joining me in the studio, we have Timon Mainga. That is just the person, or rather, sitting right next to me, who is the project manager of the Changing the Way We Care project, Catholic Relief Services. And of course, on my far right, we have Joel Mode, who is a caregiver. And of course, we had to know and we got to interact with him on the first part, who is a caregiver. And of course, we've been able to learn more about families. And of course, in this second part, we're going to talk about this International Day of Families. Why is it important to create awareness? Because on the first part, we talked about so many challenges facing the families, including divorce, marriage, breakdown. We have economic challenges right now which our families are facing. And of course, welcome back and thank you for joining us on this second part. And I think we can begin from there. Karibuni.
Thank you very much, Maureen.
Yes.
Today is the International Family Day. It's a great day, and it is important that we celebrate this day as we reflect on where we have come from. Families today in Kenya and across the globe are facing increasing challenges. Some of them we had mentioned earlier on. Challenges of economic pressure. Increasingly, we have technology, but there's also the flip side of technology. When we were growing up, a transistor radio was the only thing in our homes. Today, children have access to the internet.
Sure.
They have access to many technologies we have come across. You can see people chatting on what they call WhatsApp, TikTok, and so forth and so on. Those technologies have made life become so much impersonal. And increasingly, we have huge numbers of families living in urban slums in the cities across Africa and the globe. The numbers increased tremendously. And if you look at all those things, you reflect them and we say, are we still going to hold as families? Looking at these challenges and reflecting on, the fact that we have increased numbers of, broken families, dysfunctional families, this is a day really to reflect back on where the rain started beating the family, so to speak. And the government of Kenya, with the support from Changing the Way We Care and other stakeholders working in this care reform spectrum, is launching the National Positive Parenting Curriculum, which is supposed to be a document to really help up with a national positive parenting curriculum. And it is our desire that this curriculum is used to create awareness, to ensure that families hold, that we walk back to values which we are fast losing, because without values, I would say, are the moral compass of any individual. And all this starts from the family. So this day is important to take stock of where we are. And also looking at care reform in Kenya, we are also making a reflection of the national care reform And of course, we have a new Children's Act, which has just been approved, Children's Act 2022, so taking care of children and making a reflection on how families have this big role of ensuring that we have responsible citizens when they grow up into adulthood. There are many aspects of this work which might not be, in the public domain. But as we are speaking, we have developed the National Strategic Plan for Care Reform. At the moment, we are at the tail end of developing, a monitoring framework, so that as a country, we can, basically take stock of actions and activities we have taken to really, reverse the bad trend of breaking families and broken families and dysfunctional families, for that matter. So I think in the next few months or so, we should also be launching that, of course.
Thank you so much, Timon, for that. And moving on to you, Joel Muthe. As we celebrate or mark this day, International Day of Families 2023, what do you think is the importance of family, talking to you as a caregiver?
As a caregiver, or just like anybody else would put it, is that the family, being the basic unit of our society, this is where we learn the basic principles of life. And the basic principles of life, that will, of course, entail character development. We pick our character traits and personalities from the way we are brought up. And the upbringing is, of course, the what happens in the family. So you find that a kid will pick a value system or develop a value system that is the values that guide their daily, day-to-day way of living. They pick that from the family. Also the parents, because even the parents at some point, they were children, so they grew up in a family, and that's where they learned the basic principles of life. So I think at the basic level of the society, that is the family, it is important to celebrate this day, to celebrate the families, knowing that the families will form the basis of where the country grows from. So if we have problems at the national level, that is the countrywide, at the national level, that we will refer to the families and see what's wrong with the families. Where are the bad leaders coming from? It's the way they've been brought up. Where are the people who are being a nuisance in the society coming from? From the families. So if we can correct I think that's the root cause of all the problems that we have in the country. If we can have families that are supportive and really understand their job, the bringing up of children from children to youth and then adult, whether they become leaders at the government level, even as leaders of their own, becoming responsible citizen. It's not a must they be leaders somewhere. Becoming a responsible citizen, that is dependent on how the family handles this person from the day they were introduced, into this world, when they saw the light of the day. So the family is very important, and I think celebrating this day reminds us or takes us back to the drawing board to see what are some of the strategic plannings that we have to make sure that the families will really hold together and make sure that they understand their job and carry it out effectively in a way that is qualitative and quantitative. So that's all I would say is important about celebrating the Family Day and celebrating the families worldwide, from the smallest family, the richest, to the poorest, be it in Kenya or wherever in the world. The family is very important. That's where the society is built. The society contributes to the success of a country. So that's all.
That's perfect. As I said, that a good family makes a stable society, and of course, at large, we have the world, and it extends to good leadership in church, good pope, we say president, whatever political maybe persons we have. And moving on to you, Timon, let's talk about the theme of 2023 International Day of Families, that is demographic trends and families. What are some of the demographic trends that affect our family in life?
Yes, thank you very much. The demographic trends affecting families make a reflection. Families are growing smaller, facing many challenges. Big numbers of populations are actually living in slums, urban slums, in Kenya and across the world. And increasingly, these are putting a lot of pressure because within urban slums, if you may make a reflection, very large families live within a small square, area, and there's competition for resources. And most of the time, the slum population have limited access to, economic opportunities. And you end up with situations where we have kids really growing up without much of family guidance. And we end up with kids really having, conflict with the law. And it is not their making. It is the situation we are in. So as we celebrate this day, we need to really reflect on what holds families together. Increasingly, as we progress into the next, decade and moving forward, the urban population is going to almost, outdo or outnumber, for that matter, outnumber the population living in the rural areas. If you look at Kenya currently, the small towns which were called markets have become towns, some have become municipalities, and they're growing by the day. So I think the only thing we need to do as a nation is to reflect and say, how will the situation be? What values would we have? Looking at the population, growing up in urban centers, looking at the situation of, extended families not holding anymore. When I was growing up, my uncles, where we come from as Africans, those are small fathers, daddy mdogo, daddy mkubwa, going forward. Yeah. But today, the nuclear family is the way it is. So once you are there, you are there. The uncles are becoming, uncles, aunties, and close relatives are increasingly becoming distant in terms of relations and in terms of social and economic support. So that's a big thing for us. And as I said earlier on, this day, Kenya is launching the national positive parenting curriculum. And the need for this curriculum is really to make a reflection of where we are heading, the challenges we are facing, economic, social, and otherwise, including political. Where do we go from here? And it is our hope that this is going to be adopted across and can also be adopted in schools, because as Joel has just said, the building block of a nation starts from the family level. And if these things if we don't nurture those kids to have good behavior, have good morals, we end up with a nation which does not have proper building blocks, broken. And so anything goes. So, I mean, that is where we are. Thank you.
All right. Joel, do you want to add something from there?
There's something that Timon mentioned that caught my attention on the demographic trends. So he said that the country is really growing at a very high rate. That is, the small towns are becoming bigger towns and becoming cities, which means as we grow, that is in terms of rural areas, many of them becoming urban areas now, and the rural areas are becoming fewer and fewer, which means even the economic statuses of those residential areas are changing. And it means the country is growing at a higher rate in terms of that, in terms of infrastructural development and trade and let's say all that, in terms of real estate. But the families are not growing at the same rate as the country is growing. So the families are lagging behind, and that's where the economic challenges, the financial challenges of the family are rising from. So if the government is making efforts and putting much attention to the country growing, they should also look what happens to those families that are in those areas that are growing? You will find that a family that could afford a good living area, let's say a house or a residential area, can no longer afford that anymore. So they end up living in substandard and substandard areas, like the slums are rising, and you know, some of them being kicked out of those areas that are growing. So I think even as we look at the country growing at large, and making it look good in terms of trade and physical appearance and everything that comes with life becoming harder in terms of affordability. What can you afford? Food, housing, and everything else. That is amenities, social amenities. Because if you grow an area from a small town to a big town, then it means the hospital services there are also going to rise in terms of charges, and the family that could afford this cannot afford it anymore, so they have to move back to another area or whatever. So I think the country should also look, as we grow the country, we also look at the family. Are the families able to catch up with the high rate of growth and development in the country? And that will of course put the family at par with the growth of the country and development.
Okay, I
Thank
like
you.
that, especially right now in our country we have economic crisis.
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
I just want to add something small to
All right.
what Joel has shared. I think some of the things we are also seeing is that we have many broken marriages. Relationships are no longer holding. There's a lot of basically casual relations. And there's the so-called come we stay. And there's a child who comes out of the come we stay, union. The question is that a family? Because the come we stays never last. Of course, I'm not saying they never grow into families. Some of them have grown into strong families. But you see, those casual relations also are complicating matters for children who are looking for, foundation, who are looking for morals, who are looking for values, and so forth and so on. And then again, as I said earlier on, we have had a lot of, diseases coming. HIV was a big thing. Recently, we had the incidence of COVID-19, which really affected all of us. There are a number of families who have lost, means of income, courtesy of COVID-19. For a long time, people were held at home, and when COVID, restrictions were lifted, the economic environment in this country has changed significantly. As we are speaking today, Kenya, and it is not alone, is facing economic challenges. And some of those economic challenges are courtesy of COVID-19. So the COVID-19 affected the families in a major way, and that is something which, an area where we have partners, directing resources and support in those directions. But if these resources can reach families and strengthen them economically, then the social cohesion and the bit of morals would actually also fall in place, because sometimes it is difficult to stay in a union where you cannot provide for each other or provide for your children.
True.
Thank you.
All right, and Joel, let's move on the mental health. The month of May is celebrated, or rather, to create awareness of Mental Health Awareness Month. And in a research, it says that a recent study found that in 14 children has a caregiver with a poor mental health. Did you ever experience such in your line of the institution children home?
Yeah, to some extent, I would say. And speaking from my experience, and specifically with the charitable care institution that I went through, that is the children's home where I grew, is that you find that the caregivers, which could be, for the institutions, the caregivers are the people that are employed there. Maybe in a normal setting, there would be an institution manager, maybe a social worker, maybe there's a cook, maybe there are other staff that are there, and they are collectively the people who are giving you care, because they are the ones that are looking after you as you grow up in a care institution. So I would say in terms of mental health, you realize that it affects, of course, mental health, and the mental health issues and challenges cut across both for the people receiving care and the people that are giving care, because nobody has been spared with the new trend of people having mental illnesses and mental challenges or mental health issues, both the small ones and the big ones. Let's say normal stress, maybe depression, let's say any other, name them. We all have all those titles of mental illnesses and disorders and whatever you have. The medics will have the titles. So in general, mental health is one thing that is a challenge in the care institutions, because you find that the people that are giving care have their own challenges. Now, you meet in a care institution, you're expecting somebody to act as a caregiver and a person who will help you shape your mental health, but they themselves are victims of the same. So somebody is giving you care, you're looking up to them, but then through their own challenges that they're having, it becomes a hindrance or a barrier for them to be that mental health support that you expect. Because like for my experience coming from the streets, I had some, developed some mental issues that needed to be fixed. So coming from I had to meet somebody who is well in terms of mental issues, in terms of mental health. They have to have theirs together for them to help me put myself together as well. So we realized as we grew up there, some of them were not well as we expected. You find that somebody would have their own, normal episodes of stress or maybe depression. By that time, I couldn't understand the term depression well. But observing now, growing up and looking back at the way they brought us, I realized some of them did not have their mental health, in check. And that resulted to, them relaying the same to the kids that are receiving care. So it becomes a challenge when the person you're looking up to help you shape your mental health and put it in check, they also need the same. So in terms of mental health, the kids, especially in the care institutions, it's an area that hasn't been given a lot of attention. The attention is still needing. They have tried to an extent, but still needs a lot of work to be done, because most of the care institutions that we grew up did not have mental health experts or people who are trained in the area. So they would do it in a traditional way, trying to, like, normal conversations which can't help, but a conversation needs to have a target. What are you addressing specifically when you're engaging in conversations and activities that you think could fix this skill? So in terms of mental health and being helped in care institutions, we still need a lot of work. And I think those that grow in normal families stand a better chance to have their mental health in check, because the parent is giving you attention one-on-one. When you grow in a family, you find that the parents are well distributed, between the kids. That is among the ratio of parent to child is well. So because it's like 2 parents and 4 kids, at most 5. I come from a family of 6, so and my mom would have to give attention to 6 kids. So even given that I grew up in a care institution that held about 50 to 60 kids, and we have staff of about 4 people. So the 4 people should make sure that in terms of mental health, they are working to improve these 60 kids. So the ratio becomes problematic, and then some of the kids don't really get the attention that they deserve. So their mental health greatly ends up still needing.
All right. I think you've been able to explain a lot on the mental health issues as far as mental health awareness is concerned. And moving on to changing the way we care, do you also support persons with disability?
Yes, we do. And disability is broad. We have physical disability. We have mental disabilities. Of course, interfacing with the mental health Joel has just shared. And one of the big things, especially for the CCIs, the interventions we have been able to do and try to support, especially for kids who are still living within those institutions, is to train. Other than the fact of the ratio, which Joel has pointed out, that the ratio of the caregivers to the number of children they are taking care of is just not there. I mean, it's not a good ratio. So the parenting support and interfacing is very limited. Those social workers and the care workers within those institutions are not properly trained. And of course, they are dealing with their own mental health issues. Other than that, we have children living with autism, children living with cerebral palsy, children living with physical disability. Some, are not able to, see, and so forth and so on. So we have a number of children living under these circumstances. And as I said earlier on, we are working very closely with our partners. And let me mention one of our key partners is the Kenya Conference of Catholic Bishops, KCCB. KCCB is partnering with Changing the Way We Care, which is basically a program run by CRS and Maestro International, to work very closely with charitable institutions run by the Catholic Church in Kenya. We are working with them and creating awareness to really ensure that we bring children up in their own homes. This is just started last year as part of the program. We are also working very closely with Franciscan Sisters of St. Joseph and Franciscan Sisters of St. Anna, implementing in parts of Siaya. KCCB, as I said earlier on, is implementing across the board. The Archdiocese of Mombasa, the Metropolitan, as well as the Metropolitan of Kisumu. We are looking at adding some other, dioceses within the central region, especially the Diocese of Kiambu in particular. The Diocese of Murang'a is already implementing this particular program, Care Reform, through support of other partners. So children living with disability have the greatest need. And wherever there are issues to do with children, under CCIs, they're usually an afterthought in terms of interventions and so on. Recently, we have been able to partner with Franciscan Sisters of St. Joseph to really, bring assistive devices for those who are physically challenged, wheelchairs, crutches. We have also purchased, therapeutic machines to be able to, support these children. Some of them, if they have not gone too long with these challenges, can be rehabilitated to the extent that they can actually, regain their own strength in the limbs and be able to walk. And we are partnering also with, the government, including the county governments in this effort, because this is not a job for only one partner or one initiative. So they need support. And our motto, especially for children living with disability, is that disability is not inability. They only need, an opportunity to really exploit their full potential.
Very true. Thank you so much, Mr. Timon, for that explanation. And I think we're going to wind up on this conversation on the International Day of Families, but I'm going to give you time to do your parting shot in case you have something to talk about or you missed something in the first part and the second part you'd love to tell our viewer. Kindly do that. This is the time. And I think we're going to start with you, Joel.
As we celebrate families today in this International Family Day, I think the family is still needing a lot of support from all areas of life. That is the government. Of course, the society is comprised of, we would say the government is part of the society, the church is also part of the society, and any other institution that deals with society and family. So I think the families still need a lot of support, and in terms of being upright and carrying out the business of the core mandate of the family, because the core mandate of the family is to raise, to nurture, and to just bring up leaders and members of the society in a manner that is socially acceptable, people who are morally upright, because everybody, of course, would want to be near people who are morally upright. So in terms of families, a lot of support is still needed. Maybe the government should, and if it exists, should have a very strong department, or maybe even a whole ministry. I would say, if a ministry of family type. It will seem something important, like impossible for the government to do. But I've heard in other countries there's a country that has a whole ministry of happiness. Like they have a ministry taking care of making sure that everybody is happy in the family, in the country. So an equivalent of that I would suggest for Kenya is like having a whole ministry taking care of family issues and social development of families and the empowerment of those families. And if it actually exists, or such a ministry or department, then maybe its impact and its role out there has not been well played or brought out. So I would recommend that they go back and re-strategize on their plans to empower the family, that is all around, especially economic empowerment. Because if a family is not economically empowered and financially, most of the problems arise because of poverty. Let's not lie to each other that there could be anything else main rather than finances. Most people that have money, and I know money is not everything, have most things in check. Because when poverty, they say, there's a quote that says, when poverty enters through the door, love leaves through the window. So how can we do to empower the families financially so that apart from the basic needs and being able to afford the kind of life and living that the family would want, once they afford that that kind of life, then we can check to other things and even give them more attention. But first of all, financial challenges are key when we want to deal with the challenges that the families are facing. So amongst other issues like mental health and spiritual support and everything. And of course the spiritual part, the church has played it very well. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Joel, for your parting shot. And of course, I'm moving on to you, Timon. I'll give you, of course, 1 minute. You can share about whatever you're doing in the Changing with Care. And of course, in case you'd love to share your socials, you can also do that.
Yeah, I think I know we have kind of run over time a little, but I'll make it very short. Kenya as a country has really made a lot of strides in terms of addressing issues which make families break. We have the required legal and policy frameworks in place. This work does not just involve the government, it involves all of us, and Capuchin TV is playing its role by hosting us today as we celebrate May the 15th. A lot more effort needs to be done, and we need to keep on pulling together to ensure that issues which affect families, which make families break, issues which contribute to mental health, because some of them are basically socially triggered. When people face economic situations which are difficult, they are bound to develop mental issues, including depression. So I would just say, let's work together for better families in Kenya, because better families, well-behaved families, families with morals, are the basic foundation of a nation which is going to see tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Timon Mainga, for that parting shot, and thank you for making time and for coming to share to our viewer about the importance of family. And I think because you've said a lot of things, and time is not on our side, I'm just going to say that let's all pay attention and appreciate your family, and pay attention to your sister, to your brother, whatever. They might be going through some cases. So be there for them, and of course, love and care. And with that, we're going to create a good environment and of course, a good country and a better world. Thank you so much, Timon Mainga and Joel Muthe, for making time. And my name is Maureen Kimani. Thank you for tuning in to this conversation, and wishing you a happy International Day of Families 2023.